This week, President Donald Trump will once again make his presence known in the heart of American politics, delivering a speech to Congress that promises to be as polarizing as it is powerful. The address comes at a time when Trump's tenure as the head of the executive branch has been defined by his ability to bend, break, or entirely ignore the traditional limits of presidential power. As Trump stands before the lawmakers, in the very same chamber where 4 years ago, a violent mob of his supporters stormed the Capitol, his words and actions will undoubtedly test the already fragile relationship between the branches of the U.S. government. This speech, scheduled for Tuesday night, will unfold in the Capitol building's chamber, where memories of January 6, 2021, still haunt the minds of many lawmakers. That day, which saw a mob of Trump's most ardent supporters break into the halls of Congress, remains a powerful symbol of the danger posed by Trump's brand of politics. It is also where House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Rep. Liz Cheney, and others vowed to prevent Trump from holding office again. A pledge that now feels more complicated than ever, as the Republican Party has grown increasingly aligned with Trump's vision. Not only is this the same room where Trump's political fortunes reached an apex and began to unravel, but it's also the place where, just a few years ago, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, received a hero's welcome for his efforts to defend his country against the Russian invasion. A stark reminder of how global events can shift the power dynamics within the United States. Since Trump's re-election, his aggressive approach toward reshaping the government has sent shockwaves through Washington. His administration has aggressively pursued policies that seem designed not just to challenge established norms, but to dismantle the very institutions that make up the fabric of the American government. Alongside his billionaire ally, Elon Musk, Trump has embarked on a mission to downsize the federal government, firing thousands of workers, cutting agencies, and taking aim at what he sees as waste and inefficiency. This relentless push toward reducing the size of government extends far beyond domestic policy. Trump has also sought to reorient the country's foreign relations, including publicly criticizing Zelensky and cozying up to Russian leadership, a foreign policy shift that has left many concerned about America's place on the world stage. With his power growing unchecked, Trump faces an increasing number of legal challenges. More than 100 lawsuits are currently pending against him, many focusing on the legality of his administration's actions. These cases, which span multiple issues from immigration to foreign policy to executive overreach, paint a picture of a president who seems to delight in testing the boundaries of the law. His response to these challenges has been consistent. He dares Congress and the courts to try and stop him. In doing so, he has framed the ongoing constitutional debates as not a crisis in the making, but as a fait accompli. People talk about a constitutional crisis, but we're already there, said Rep. James Clyburn of South Carolina, one of the most senior Democrats in the House. His statement reflects the growing concern among many lawmakers that Trump's conduct is threatening the very foundations of American governance, testing the limits of executive power as he prepares to deliver his speech to Congress. Trump is poised to test the very limits of executive authority. His presidency has been marked by an unprecedented concentration of power in the White House, with Trump using executive orders and actions to sidestep the legislative process and bypass congressional approval. His administration has faced numerous legal battles, but with Republicans controlling both the executive and legislative branches of government, Trump has been able to push through much of his agenda, all while positioning himself as a lone actor capable of upending the status quo. One of the most significant tests of Trump's executive power will be his handling of the nation's budget, with the government facing a potential shutdown on March 14th. If funding is not approved, Trump's reliance on Congress to fund the federal government has become a critical point of negotiation. His administration's aggressive stance on immigration, defense spending, and domestic policy means that lawmakers will need to find common ground to prevent economic collapse. With Congress is far from straightforward. While House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune have positioned themselves as partners to Trump, publicly backing his efforts to cut taxes and shrink government, there is a growing undercurrent of concern among Republicans about the long-term implications of Trump's policies. Johnson, for example, has expressed his excitement over Trump's efforts to root out waste, fraud, and abuse, referring to the president's ongoing push to reduce the size of the federal government. But these policies have alarmed many, including within Trump's own party, as they threaten to disrupt crucial government services. Tax cuts remain a top priority for Trump, especially the extensions of the 2017 tax cuts he championed during his first term. However, pushing this legislation through Congress has proven difficult. Even with a Republican majority in both houses, Trump's tax cut proposals are accompanied by a raft of budget cuts, including cuts to Medicaid and other social services that millions of Americans depend on. For many Republicans, the challenge is how to balance the demands of fiscal conservatism with the growing demands of an electorate that is increasingly dissatisfied with the erosion of services. Trump's immigration agenda has also come under scrutiny. His plan to execute the largest deportation operation in U.S. history is running short of funds, and his border czar, Tom Homan, has been lobbying Republicans in Congress to approve additional funds for the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Defense. These budget debates, which are closely tied to Trump's broader political strategy, underscore the tension between Trump's desire to enact sweeping reforms and the practical limitations of government funding. The constitutional showdown is. The budget debates continue. They are complicated by the ongoing clash between Trump and Congress over the scope of executive authority. The Trump administration's actions are putting the Nixon-era Impoundment Control Act to the test. This law, which prevents the executive branch from withholding funds that Congress has already allocated, is a critical part of the constitutional framework designed to ensure that Congress has the final say on federal spending. In many ways, this standoff represents a microcosm of the broader constitutional crisis that Trump's presidency has triggered. Testing the boundaries, as Representative Steve Womack of Arkansas put it, is exactly what Trump has been doing throughout his presidency. While Womack supports much of Trump's agenda, he recognizes the risks associated with executive overreach. What we don't want is a constitutional crisis, Womack said, acknowledging that the separation of powers is at risk. If one branch of government, in this case, the executive, becomes too dominant, for many Americans, the stakes are far more than just theoretical. The actions taken by the Trump administration are already having real-world consequences on people's lives. Communities across the country depend on federal funds to support healthcare programs, school initiatives, and a wide range of services that are critical to daily life. The ongoing political struggle over these funds has put these programs at risk, with many Americans uncertain about how much longer they will be able to rely on government assistance. Republican lawmakers, such as Senator Jim Justice of West Virginia, have acknowledged the concerns of their constituents. Although many voters support Trump's efforts to reduce the size of government, There is widespread fear about what such cuts will mean for vital services, particularly in areas like Medicaid and early childhood education programs. Justice, a former governor, has cautioned against jumping to conclusions. People are always afraid of the dark, he said, urging his fellow Republicans to give Trump's budget proposals time to materialize before they panic. The legacy of January 6th and the specter of violence, while the budget debates and executive actions play out in Washington, the shadow of January 6, 2021, still looms large over the Capitol. The violent assault on the U.S. Capitol, instigated by Trump's supporters, was a direct challenge to the legitimacy of the U.S. government. For many lawmakers, the memories of that day remain raw, and the fear of further violence is ever present. Congress will take place in the same chamber, where Pelosi and other lawmakers were forced to flee as rioters overwhelmed Capitol Police. It's where law enforcement officers were fighting for their lives, while lawmakers were holed up in secure locations, waiting for the chaos to subside. As Trump addresses the nation from the very same dais where Pelosi once stood, his words will carry an added weight, not just as a political statement, but as a reminder of the violence and chaos that has marked his time in office. The aftermath of January 6th continues to ripple through American politics. Trump's sweeping pardon of the rioters, including extremist leaders like Stuart Rhodes and Enrique Tarrio, has further deepened divisions within the country. These individuals, convicted of sedition, have now returned to the political fold, and some have even made appearances at the Capitol since their release from prison. This act of clemency was emblematic of Trump's approach to governance, one that prioritizes loyalty and power over the rule of law. Senator Peter Welch of Vermont, who was in the Capitol on January 6th, expressed concerns about the concentration of power in Trump's hands. "I acknowledge that he won, and he's got the right to use all the executive authority to pursue his policies," Welch said. "He doesn't have a right to exceed constitutional authority." These remarks underscore the broader concerns shared by many lawmakers who fear that Trump's unchecked power is eroding the democratic principles that underpin the nation's system of government. Conclusion: as Trump prepares to deliver his address to Congress, the stakes have never been higher. His unprecedented use of executive power has reshaped the political landscape, but it has also triggered a wave of legal challenges and political resistance. Whether Trump can continue to push the boundaries of presidential authority without provoking a constitutional crisis remains to be seen. However, one thing is clear: his presidency has forever altered the balance of power in the United States, and the echoes of January 6th will continue to reverberate through Washington for years to come.